Good evening, everyone. Let me do a little adjustment here. Just wait 1 minute or so. Let a few more people drift on. Okay, I think if I could get some of you to put on your cameras and say hello to each other, it would be a sweet beginning to our evening. Kind of break out of, and that not just visually say good evening, audio.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hello.
Hi,
everybody.
Hi, Howie.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you all.
Hi,
everybody.
All your
Yo.
voices,
Hi.
visuals, voices. It's medicine right now in this isolated existence, so thank you. I think there's a collective grief, collective weariness. There's collective a lot of different things right now. So I can't think of anything more soothing than giving kind and interested and relaxed attention to our hearts, our bodies, and give us a chance to metabolize everything that has been happening in our lives in this world, this crazy world. So really happy you're here supporting each other. This mysterious sense of interbeing, of non-separateness that allows us to actually feel a little bit the sense of being together. So with refuge in the community of support that we offer each other, refuge in the intention to open to whatever we experience, the Dharma, and with the refuge of our own capacity to be awake and aware. The real medicine of our awakening is Buddha, wakefulness, awake. Dharma, the way things are, and Sangha, the community of awakening. So we take all the alchemy of the three refuges, we bring them together in one vital point, which is our sitting body. And we, as we connect with our sitting body, the fact that we're sitting here, we're doing a few things all at the same time. We're saying, I am not in the memory of myself, the idea of myself. I am tasting the reality of myself. Not my story, not historical, but I'm tasting the direct experience of life right where it's touching me. I'm also, by bringing my scattered attention to this body of ours, I'm also creating the conditions, the inner conditions for harmony, in spite of how chaotic the world is, all our problems. There is a capacity that each of us has for harmony here and now. If our mind and body can mingle, stay long enough, step out of the stream of distress and into this simple experience of attention and sensation, we can create the conditions for peace. And it is our own peaceful mind and body that makes a peaceful world, one moment at a time. So if you can, give up your hopelessness tonight. Give up your rage, give up your grief even. But if it comes, if all these things come, at least relate to them as feelings. But for our healing tonight, we want to keep our minds, our attention in our body, and keep our body in our mind. We want to cradle our mind in our body. We want to cradle our body in our mind. Letting it settle in, letting our body settle into a gentle stillness. Making sure not to be forcing it, straining it, making it any particular way, but just letting it go, letting it be, just like a block of ice that's been left out in a warm sun. It's melting into the openness, the embrace of awareness, the embrace of our kind attention. Naturally, we will, when synced up in this way, when mind and body have come together to be just one thing, we'll naturally feel the way our mind and body are breathing. You may even have the sense that this mind and body are being breathed because we're so connected with life. Life is breathing. So it stops being such a personal experience, a much more universal experience of this shared breath. All connected to the same resource, spirit, nectar of life, of breath. Just this breath, just this moment. Past, future, just a dream, just this. Coming home, being home, staying home. Staying aware. And no matter how many times we fall into daydreaming, imagining, get lost in thought, each moment we wake up to where we are, we embrace as an opportunity to come home again, to stay home, to be home, to stay aware, to be aware. state of being, lucid, clear, open, kindly responsive to whatever we see, sounds, moods, thoughts, and breath. Just this moment. Again, let your mind be cradled by your body. Let your body be cradled by your mind until they're no longer two things, just sensation, knowing, with no dividing line. Sync up, come home, stay home, be home, be aware.
Hello.
is there awareness right now? What is being known, or what are you aware of? And what's the attitude of mind meeting whatever you're aware of? Is it mind open and welcoming? Is it resistant, contentious? Is there some strain to make something happen? Is there some narrating or personalizing what's going on? Just know what's in your mind without letting your mind leave your body. Cradling your body, cradling your mind with your body. Everything welcome, not going anywhere, not becoming someone, staying home. So sorry. Just another thing to test your equanimity today. Pleasure to sit with you. Just having a lot of appreciation during the sitting for all of you showing up and supporting each other. And for some reason, these Tuesday evenings and the online practicing kind of breaks the spell that I often have and I hear others have about what we call Zoom fatigue, because so much of our work is online. But this is different. We're invited to turn inward, to be secluded in our own practice, but with just the little thread of connection that we have being together. So it's not just another Zoom experience. And so I just wanted to name that, but because it's really a powerful thing to practice together, whether it's in person or online. At least it feels that way to me. Just as an aside, I spent the weekend leading a retreat that was hosted by the Regina, Saskatchewan community. There's some people here tonight who were on that retreat. And sitting tonight, we were literally online all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And tonight, what was so apparent, having been on Zoom, what was so apparent is I was still feeling the fragrance and the residue of that continuity of practice over the weekend. And so if you're practicing, it seems to transcend some of our usual perceptions of reality, our usual complaints. Anyway, I just really appreciated sitting with you. We have a few minutes for some comments, questions, comments, anything that may have emerged in the sitting, anything about the instructions or anything confusing, and just about managing this this proliferation of massacres and just the ever-present, at least it impinges on my heart, the ever-present inequities in our world and our culture, our country, and just the prevalence of so many of what the Buddha called the three poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion. Just any questions about that, working with all of that, or what you actually noticed in the practice tonight? And I think I know how to do this now. Mary, even though you are co-pilot, I think I can say in the reactions place on the Zoom screen, there's a little place that says raised hand. So that's how we'll identify you as someone who wants to speak. And for those who have an old version, it's under the participants. And that part, maybe Mary, you could help explain that, where it is in the participants.
Yeah, on older versions of Zoom, in the participants box, at the bottom, there is usually a raise hands option. So, and then if we don't see you, you can simply unmute yourself. There's a moment of silence and ask away.
As I most often remind you that your comment or question will likely be of some use to someone else. It's part of our refuge in the Sangha, support of the Sangha community. So feel free if you do feel the impulse, but if you don't, just bathe in the silence, being together. Stephanie, please.
Hi. My question is partly related to posture, I guess sort of a technical question, but also going to what you said before, Howie, about how we're processing all that is happening. I found myself during the practice being just nodding, falling asleep so many times, and I didn't really think I was that tired, but I did attend several Zoom events today relating to all that is happening and the grief of the past year and all that. So I'm sure that's probably part of it. And so just about posture, I found myself, slumping over, and I would wake up and be sort of hunched over in my seat. And I know one of the things about practice is just noticing what's happening rather than trying to correct it or change it or whatever. But I felt myself wanting to sit up straight so I could sort of start over again. And I just wondered if you have any thoughts or advice about that. Thanks.
Thank you for the question. And yes, I think some of the fatigue that is felt, some of the sinking mind, or what the Tibetans call stupid shamatha, a lot of tranquility, but not much energy and not much attention. I think that's all very natural in this world, with all that everyone is, all the things that we're processing, all the sense experiences that are impinging on our tender beings. It's exhausting. And when you do notice that you're having sinking mind or dullness and you're dropping forward, it's perfectly fine to sit up. The one place in our practice that we make adjustments is not to what we're experiencing so much through our different senses, but the quality of our attention. And in order for you to pay attention and see what's going on, you have to have a balance of tranquility, but you have to have a little vitality, a little energy. So perfectly fine to sit up. In the same way, when your mind is really quite tight, then it's perfectly fine. You're tight and reactive. It's perfectly fine, and it's intuitive sometimes just to open a little bit, be a little more spacious, a little more relaxed. So what you're not really changing your first acknowledging, just like you said, the truth of what your experience is, but then both the wise and the loving thing is to sit up or to make those little adjustments. Totally fine. And you'll see that balance in our practice changes all the time between tranquility and energy. When tranquility is higher, when we quiet down a little bit, when we settle, tranquility high, energy low, we do this. When energy is high and tranquility is low, we can't sit still. We're restless, agitated. So with each one, with restlessness, we soften, we soothe, we go to our primary anchor in a really gentle way so that we have our body and mind in harmony. We just sometimes drop in the word calm or ease, because it's an unconditional quality. And when we're dull, we pick it up a little bit. So thanks for the question.
Thank you.
Catherine, please.
Hi, thanks for taking my question, Howie. I am feeling a lot of anguish about the shootings and the anti-Asian violence that's happening even here. And I guess I'm sensing two things. One is just kind of a faltering of courage. Just I feel like we've been through so much, and we've had to stand up. We've been standing up against so much hatred, and I just feel exhausted by it, by just the endlessness of it. That's one thing. And I was experiencing that in the sit. And I've also been really experiencing just a sense of complete impatience with the slowness of the vaccination process, and I'm just done. I'm just not able to sit with the way things are right now. I'm having a really hard time after a year of being pretty patient. And I'm just sensing this intense restlessness and desire to speed things up and make things change.
Mm,
And yet not a lot of energy to actually
right.
do anything about anything.
Anyway, sorry for the pain that all of us are experiencing, but particularly you this evening. Completely appropriate to feel reactive, impatient, anguish, everything, the whole range. Exhausted. I think in those times, the times when you don't have anything left, no courage, it's just bearing it. And then as much as possible, although that sometimes takes too much energy, is to make sure that you're at least self-soothing a little bit, bringing some acknowledgement. This is really hard. This is painful. So some kind of self-compassion without turning it into a project. And yeah, and mostly what the Dharma or the teachings, if we take refuge in the Dharma, it's not having an absence of impatience or courage. It's when you feel those things that you don't compound it. When you say, I'm done, you feel what that's like. You turn toward that feeling instead of building a whole monument to being done or to impatient.
I've been really beating myself up for being impatient.
Oh,
And for just feeling like I just want to shut down.
yeah.
Just not-
You know, when I talked about in the sitting tonight was notice the attitude of mind. This is mindfulness of mind. We usually have one of three things going on in our mind in how we're relating to things, with grasping, trying to make something happen. That will exhaust us. Resisting what's happening, that will exhaust us. But greed and hatred are our human, those are the poisons that live in every single person's mind. If you don't have greed and hatred and ignorance, you're not one of us. And that has to be, in the long run, I'm saying this to everyone, that is our practice. In acknowledging and feeling them, turning them into the manure of the Dharma. But the fact that we experience that, that's just so natural. It's just impatience is just another form of aversion. And we usually become averse to try to protect ourselves. The Buddha said it comes from frustrated desire. We want something and it's not happening. And the other is wounded pride when we can't control it. The world's not in our control and it's humbling. So that's when we feel reactive, and who doesn't? Who doesn't? So you're right on track. It's just that second arrow, that's what we really transform. We don't stop feeling. I think maybe as one practices a long, long time, there's a diminishment of greed and hatred. No doubt about it. That's part of the teaching on the stages of awakening, is that as we see more how out of control things are, how selfless things are, as we develop a little bit more equanimity with life, that it's not so personal, something in us lets go, and we taste a little more freedom. And with those little tastes of freedom come at least it's said, an uprooting of the forces of grasping and impatience. So those are the fetters in our mind that can be loosened with our practice, but it's just so human. Anyway, I went on and on, but I thought your comments were really appropriate for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last but not least, Annalisa.
Hi, Howie.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, Howie. Good to see everyone. I think I'm most likely like Catherine, but I am experiencing something painful. Someone very close to me passed away yesterday.
Who was it that passed away?
A very close friend of mine.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So yeah, and so I am trying to figure out, and I meditated yesterday, and I came back today for the mission Dharma, and I'm trying to figure out, is it appropriate to sit when we are going through this incredible pain and our heart is aching, and like I'm trying to. It helped a little bit yesterday. I was able to cry, and today I was able to
Emma, up.
into my emotions. I feel like, is there like
Emma, up.
someone
Yeah.
on? Okay.
Was that in your home?
No.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, my question was around when we're going through a very difficult time and it's really painful and it's a loss, and is it right to sit and meditate, or it is what it is? I don't know. Like I'm trying to.
I think it's a great question, and many people have the same question arise during times of great loss. And I generally think of, when you say try to meditate, I wouldn't necessarily try to meditate. I would just sit with, if you can, if what you mean is just let yourself feel what you feel. I think of times of grief as more of a time to just see what would really be nurturing right now. It's so rather than a time to develop your meditation, more of a time of healing, more of a time of nurturing. And if it feels nurturing to let the feelings be felt and create a space for yourself, and then have the support of sitting with others, then great. But if it feels, and we become our own authority, of course, if it feels too much, then it's actually appropriate to redirect your attention somewhere else.
Yeah.
To see what would be soothing at this time, in a healthy way, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you know that already, but I'm sorry for your loss. And
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words.
if I wish we could give you a big collective hug, or I could, I'll speak for myself. I'd love to be able to squeeze you and
Yeah, I am receiving the love. Thank you so much.
great.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah. I see a big heart from Catherine. Okay. Well, let's thank you for the comments and questions, descriptions. Sorry for all of our loss. I think that's some of what I had in mind tonight, was just to share in the collective loss. But at the same time, knowing what we're doing has some value. And so we'll have a short break, and before we do that, Mary, I think you have a few announcements, and I might want to piggyback as well, but then we'll take a little short break and try to have a little more Dharma.
All right. Thank you. And welcome everyone to Mission Dharma. So we have a couple of practice opportunities coming up very soon. This Saturday, there will be a half-day retreat, and it is called, there we are. Don't take it personally, an argument against self-blame and self-congratulations. So it's a half-day online retreat with Howie. It's this Saturday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And so the registration, I'll drop the links in the chat box in a few minutes. So, and it's also on the website, so you can do that. And those half-day retreats, if you haven't done one yet, it's about time. It's always a wonderful day of practice, half day of practice. And then also Howie has a longer retreat coming up in about a month.
Yeah, you don't need to announce that one this time.
Okay, all right.
I think what I would like to, I just got the word that the Tucson community is starting to widen the invitation to the 4-part series that I'll be doing starting on the 3rd of April, I think. That's
Right.
That's 4 alternate week Saturday mornings, 9:30 to 12:30 West Coast and Mountain Standard Time, Arizona meaning.
Okay.
It's being hosted by the Tucson community. But anyway, that's going to be on happiness, on being happy when times are difficult. So please join. Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
And I'll go ahead and drop the link for that, and that's also on the website. So and finally, just a word about Dana. As you know, in our tradition, the teachings are given freely because they are considered priceless. And our role in turn is to practice Dana, or generosity, by making monetary offerings for the teachings. And it's important to remember that Dana is not payment for goods or services. It's a gift from the heart. So your generosity is a gift that supports not just the teacher, not just Howie, but you're also supporting one another in ensuring that we have access to these teachings in the future. And it's also a gift to yourself. It's a gift to your practice. So you can offer Dana. Again, I will drop the links in via Venmo, via PayPal. If you need an address to send a check, just ping me. And yeah, so Howie, are you going to take a little break, or do you want to go straight into your?
Well, how about taking literally 1 minute, a minute and a half, just to do what you need to do, whether it maybe a quick bio break or just sit quietly and just marinate in the silence for a moment.
And take care of your Dana. Yeah. Okay.
Take care of the Dana as well.
Right. Thanks.
And I'll hit the gong when I'm ready. Thank you. as I was sitting this evening, I was feeling the, in spite of all of the swirling in our world and so many things that are hard to bear, just talking to Mary before the sitting, and she had a nice little turn of phrase. She says, COVID numbers are down, but shootings are up. And this reality of this mad gun culture, this expression of delusion, greed, and hatred. No matter it's not something that that's easy to be with, and it asks us to develop some measure of equanimity, some measure of balance, some mental strength, some capacity, some courage. And then I wonder, how does sitting, just stopping, putting my mind in my body in my mind, marinating in silence, cradling my mind with my body, cradling my body with my mind is a part of the instruction tonight. How does that really solve this dilemma of this mad culture that we live in? This world that seems to be much more driven by the poisons than by the wholesome qualities that live in us. And it may seem like it's not relevant to be together in this way, talking about the Dharma, but I kept coming back to I kept having the lines from the poem from Donald Babcock called The Little Duck, where he says there's a huge heaving in the Atlantic. A huge heaving in the Atlantic. And there's this little duck. And what does the duck do in the face of this storm, this heaving in the Atlantic? He sits down in it. He cuddles in the swells. He reposes or something in the immediate, as if it were infinity, which it is. He eases himself into the boundless, into that place of deep inner being and interconnection. He eases himself into the boundless right where it touches him. And the poet says that the duck doesn't have much above the eyebrows, but the duck has religion. And this form of religion, of what I consider the best of wisdom traditions, is they swim against the stream. They remind us that even in the midst of greed and hatred and ignorance, there's so much love, there's so much goodness, there's so much capacity that we have to be well, to be happy. that we have to risk being well. We have to remember in whatever way we can that that all beings are sharing the same breath, the same spirit. I was talking to my wife about breath, about breathing, and we're talking about how, we say, well, this is tonight's reflection on it. We say, I breathe, but really it's I'm breathed. There's really no I who breathes. Breathing happens, but no breather. When we look very carefully at the process, we are all being breathed by life. And when we drop into the middle of it, when we just stop, and even if we're not paying attention, 99% of the time, our body is just breathing along all by itself, just being breathed. And if we just that little act of connecting with breath, we connect with our non-separateness, and I realize that if I do that and you do that, we are actually going against the stream of the mind that moves toward violence. It creates the conditions for, as Sam Keen says, to transform or change our anger and our rage into grief, into just feeling that release, feeling the loss, feeling our shared place in the family of beings. But if we don't stop, we end up getting more impatient, pissed off, blaming. I just love the teachings of Malidoma Somé, the African healer, teacher, who, I know this is not, he's speaking about, in this passage I'm going to share with you, he's speaking about when someone in the village does something harmful, and it's much more complicated to deal with someone who massacres, who is part of a systemic suffering. But still, it calls out to us to see that person who causes harm, that culture that causes harm, is expressing something. So Malidoma says that when someone in his village is taken over by a strong emotion, the entire village attends to that person. The reason is that for the Dagara people of Malidoma's homeland, strong emotion is never about just one person alone, but rather about the village community itself. In their highly charged emotional state, a certain person is understood to be giving birth to something that the entire village needs to know and needs to address. So emotion, and to me, everything that we do is considered one of the primary ways that the unseen forces in our world are expressing themselves. So I was, this may not be popular, but I was reflecting on the perpetrator of this massacre yesterday. And then I remembered this passage from Martin Luther King. When he said, and he was, in this case, he was talking about those who riot. But you can extrapolate, you can think about those who commit really violent acts. It says, I might say tonight that a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it? In this particular passage, he's talking about America. And what is it America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice and humanity. So when we stop, we feel our interbeing, we know that when someone expresses something, it's not just that person alone. It's something all of us are participating in some way. But knowing that our world is so driven by these poisons of greed and hatred and ignorance, what the Buddha called the 3 root causes of suffering. Intuitively, we know that what actually goes against the stream of that is love, is clarity, is tapping into that inner resource of connection, tapping into that the filling of the heart that happens when we stop. When we don't stop, you get what Sam Keen speaks so beautifully about. When he talks about substituting grief for anger, he says to lessen the quantity of cruelty and sadism, we must learn to listen to the cry beneath violence. The victor must hear himself in the victim's cry, the winner feel himself in the humiliation of the loser. So long as we can visit pain on another, we need not feel our own pain. Anger lifts depression. For a time, purging our rage on a scapegoat relieves us of the feeling. But the need for the cleansing of the unacceptable feelings builds up, and we must plunge into a new circle of violence. The only certain way out of the blind ritual of war and violence is by learning to substitute grief for anger. Those who mourn the childhood love they never had, who treat their own wounds tenderly, learn to forgive and to break the vicious cycle of the wounded and the wounding. When we're unable to confess that our own parents, our own governments, our own styles of life have disappointed and injured us and others, I add, we will inevitably create an enemy on whom we heap our anger. Every day we're not grieving is a day we will be taking vengeance. So in general, against the stream is stopping. Balancing the scales of greed, hatred, and ignorance is stopping and feeling, but we're not so good at feeling. We are so much more practiced at thinking about our feelings, and we just don't feel them. So learning against the stream means learning to be more emotionally articulate, able to feel what we feel. Instruction from Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. Let yourself be in the emotion. So that's for anyone tonight feeling anything, to the extent that you feel able to. Never feel pressured to stay with something. Sometimes we need to shift our attention away, but that was my addition. Let yourself be in the emotion, go through it, give into it, experience it. You begin to go toward the emotion rather than just experiencing the emotion coming toward you. A relationship, a dance begins to develop. Then the most powerful energies become absolutely workable rather than taking you over, because there is nothing to take you over if you are not putting up resistance. The music and dance take place at the same time. This is the lion's roar. Learning to feel, learning to see that, transform our anger into grief. Another flavor from Wendell Berry. It doesn't necessarily solve all our world's problems, but I do have some confidence that if you can find that place of peace and balance, independent of circumstances, that you will be, you are and will be a real refuge for others. The weekend retreat I led this past weekend was on what we can rely on and about taking refuge. And I looked it up in the dictionary: a condition of being safe and sheltered from pursuit, danger, or trouble, or something providing shelter. And a well collected, well secluded, a well developed heart and mind is both a protection from you and a protection for others. So Wendell Berry just gives more emphasis to developing this almost like a reflex, rather than go out in reactivity in feeding the poisons. We instead stop and listen, feel. Wendell Berry says, when despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's life may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. Come back to nature, our nature. I come into the peace of wild things, who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. You step out of that futurizing for a time. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. This version of against the stream, of the opposing forces to this greed and hatred and ignorance, this is a form of radical social action. Not the only one, just as Catherine was put in the chat. We need to get rid of guns already, for crying out loud. And do everything, be out. We just need to be pounding the pavement, but we equally need to go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, where the great heron sings. We need to come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. We need to up our practice. To be a refuge, to go to refuge. So may we all go to refuge, be a refuge. May we all learn how to experience grief, how to reduce greed and hatred and ignorance. And may we all mobilize to rid this world of the scourge of guns and gun violence. May our practice tonight and every night be dedicated to the welfare and benefit of all. May all beings realize that sacred happiness that is beyond sorrow here and now, but able to feel sorrow here and now. May all beings grow in equanimity and serenity, able to meet the joys and the sorrows with less reactivity. May all beings be liberated, free. And may our practice today and every day be dedicated to all beings. So thanks for hanging in there, allowing me to share my own